Voice is audible. My voice is audible. My voice is audible.
Yes, sir.
Windows. So the most widely used operating system is Windows because Windows is a graphical user interface. Anybody they can easily understand, easy to learn, easy to work. So Windows is a most widely used operating system. It is a user friendly, easy to learn, easy to work. In Windows, we have two types of operating systems. One is client OS, another one is server OS. What is client, what is server? Server provide resources to clients. Clients access the resources from servers. So if you take any mobile or any desktop, so we are using client operating systems. So we are getting resources from servers. You are watching online YouTube and you are downloading different apps. From where you are downloading means you are accessing different websites. So from servers. So now we are going to learn that server administration course, but not on Windows. We are going to learn on Linux server administration. Like Windows, we have another operating system is there, that is Linux. So it is a Unix based operating system. It is a Unix based. Linux is also like a flavor of Unix. Linux is a flavor of Unix. So what are the other flavors? Solaris, IBM AX Unix, HP Unix, Co Unix, IRIX like that. Linux is a flavor of Unix. But Linux is a open source. Open source means anybody they can download the source kernel from internet. You can develop your own operating system. I can develop my own operating system. Like that in Linux, we have number of flavors are there. Number of flavors. Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Amazon Linux, Oracle Enterprise Linux, Ubuntu Linux Server, CentOS, Fedora Linux, SUSE Linux. Like that we have number of Linux flavors. Out of these flavors, the most familiar flavor is a production environment. We are going to use Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So if you learn any flavor of the Linux, you can work on any other flavors also. You can work on any other flavors also. So if you go for the production environment, some servers are Windows servers, some are Linux servers. But to high-end databases, applications, web servers, middleware applications, enterprise applications, like databases, we are going to run securely on Linux servers. That is the reason the valuable crores of rupees we are going to run on Linux servers because of security. Linux is a more secured operating system than Windows. But how do you differentiate the security between Windows and Linux? So how do you differentiate the security between Windows to Linux? So then you have to understand the structure of operating system. Windows operating system structure: hardware, kernel, user application. Hardware, kernel, user application. Linux operating system structure: hardware, kernel, shell, user application. So shell is the security layer in Linux. Shell will not allow you to run any unknown commands. Shell will not allow you to run any unknown programs. Shell will not allow you to run any unknown programs. Shell will not allow you to run any unknown commands. That is the reason viruses will not attack on Linux operating system. But in Windows, what happens? What user will tell, kernel will do. That is the reason viruses will attack on Windows operating system. Next, Windows identify the files with extension names. .exe executable file, .dat database file, .bat batch files, .mp3 media player, .d4c Microsoft Word. So that is the reason if you are a programmer, if you open any notepad, if you write a program, if save the file as if you save the file as abc.exe, so the kernel can understand that is executable file. So whatever the program you written, it will run the program. That is the reason viruses will attack. So if you write a virus program, if you run that program, automatically it executes the program, then viruses will attack on your Windows operating system. And some unwanted mails you can get, you can download a file, automatically it will execute, you can get the virus. If you have a virus in your pen drive, if I put into my laptop, I can get my virus, your virus operating system into my laptop. Because in Windows auto.exe files will run. But Linux will not support. So this is structure, just now explained you: hardware, kernel, shell, user. But Linux will not support extension file names. No extension file names in Linux. But how the Linux operating system identify the files? The Linux operating system identify the files with the type of file. Type of file means whether it is a normal file or block special file or ASCII text file or device files or character special, like that. And mode of file. Mode means permissions. So how the Linux identify the files? Linux identify the files with type and mode. Type and mode. But in Windows, no file level permissions. That is I am going to explain now. Linux will not support extension file names, remember. And type of file and mode of file. Mode means permissions. So I created user account Sai. Sai logged into the server. He created one file. Touch space file name. File name is Apple. Whenever the user created a file, by default permissions will apply. What are the permissions? User. User means owner. Having which permission? Read, write. So Sai is a member of AWS group. Second portion goes to his group members. They are having which permission? Read-only permission. Like AWS, we have DevOps groups, .NET group, managers, team leaders, HR department. We have some other groups. They are having read-only permissions. So whenever we are working with Linux, if you send a file to me, I can have only read permissions. There is no file level permissions in Windows. There is a file level permissions in Linux. So if you are working with Linux, for example, you created one file, you sent a file to me. So if I am your group member, I have only read permission. If I am not your group member only, I am having read only permissions. By default, whenever you send a file, so if your group members or other group members, they can have only read only permissions. So who can change file permissions? Administrator can change any user's file permissions, or else the owner who created the files, he can change his own file permissions. But when we are working with Windows, if you send a file to me, I can have all permissions. I can read, write, modify, delete. No file level permissions in Windows. There is a file level permissions in Linux. So architecture level, we have shell is there, and OS level, we have file permissions are there. This much of security is there in Linux. That is the reason the valuable crores of rupees databases and applications we are going to run securely on Linux servers. So once we are having the strong skills on Linux server administration, then you can go for the multiple technology knowledge. Whenever you want to go for learning AWS or DevOps or virtualization technology, VMware administration, somebody wants to learn databases like big data, Hadoop, middleware applications like IBM WebSphere web applications, VAS admin servers, and enterprise applications like SAP, we must have strong knowledge on Linux server administration. Linux server administration. So Linux plus AWS, or Linux plus DevOps, Linux plus Hadoop. Like that, we have to put in our resume. So that is the reason. So we must have the strong skills on Linux server administration. Somebody needs, they want to learn scripting, like shell scripting, Python, Java, PHP. So these persons also required to learn Linux server administration to elaborate their programming skills. That is the reason we are going to learn the Linux server administration course. So whatever I am going to teach, that is, you can put the experience of 3+ years of experience you can put on only Linux, you can get the job. But from your side, you have to practice properly. So the course is designed into three levels, like basics of Linux. So initially, how to install Linux operating system and what are the basics of Linux, how to create files, directories, how to copy the files, directories, how to rename the files, directories, how to removing the all basic commands. So Windows just to right click, copy, paste, right click, cut to paste. In Linux, we are going to use some commands. So like how to use that commands we are going to discuss in basics. After completing the basics, we are going to learn administration part. So standalone administration and network administration. In standalone administration, so these are the topics we are going to learn. Installation of Linux operating systems, disk management, managing the disks in Linux, booting process of Linux operating system, different run levels in Linux, group management, user management, user quotas, and advanced file permissions, memory management, so process management, package administration in Linux, online package manager, M server setup in Linux, logical volume manager, how to combine multiple disks as a single logical device, how to manage the disks, and RAID levels. This is also like combining the disks only, but we can tell to the system, you can write the data like this, like sequential order, parallel order, like mirroring, like we can give some suggestions. So next, backup and restore, taking the backup of files and directories, file system backups. So backup tools. And whenever the data is corrupted, how to restore them. So everything we are going to discuss in the chapter, backup and restore. Then scheduling jobs, automation of jobs. How to write the scripts. A script means not scripting. Automation of jobs means every day evening 6:30 p.m. take the backup of Oracle updated files. Every month first date 15th date the users who logged into the server what they are doing. Like that type of automation of tasks we can write in specific point of times. So here total overall 16 chapters are there. So out of these 16 chapters you can see there is no single word of networking. So 80% of the questions they will ask from this location only, standalone. Then we can enter into the Linux networking part. Configuration of Linux operating system in the network. So how to give the host name, how to permanent it, how to give the IP address, how to permanent it, how to give the default gateway, how to permanent it, and how to set up telnet server, and how to set up SSH server, how to use SSH keys, how to copy the data from one system to another system, and FTP server configuration, file transfer protocol, downloading the files and uploading the files, online file server in Linux, NFS server setup. So server is Linux, clients are Windows. How to share the data from Linux servers to Windows servers, Windows systems. Samba server we need to configure. And DNS, domain name server, domain name system. So how to resolve name to addresses and addresses to names. And Apache web server, how to configure websites in Linux. NIS servers, naming information service. Centralization of administration in Linux. And next, DHCP, dynamic host configuration protocol. So how to assign the IP addresses automatically to the clients. The Linux kickstart server, how to install number of Linux operating systems through network. So this is the entire course we are going to learn in depth in our Linux administration class. So if you have any doubts, please ask me. So anybody having doubts, please ask me. Is there
Yes,
any
yes.
doubts, please ask me.
Can you please the user management, sir? Can you please explain?
User management, creating,
Yes.
managing, deleting users, password management of users, user monitoring commands, how to change the home directories, how to change the shell, and how to see the complete information of user, how to change the password age of users, and how
Okay.
to modify the user accounts, how to configure the quotas of users. Everything we are going to discuss in user management.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Okay,
Okay, sir.
that is a big chapter.
Okay, sir.
Is there any other doubts? Please ask.
Sir, if you don't mind, please send the mail today.
Demo class.
Yes, yes, sir. Today demo
Yeah,
class.
you can get the demo class video. No problem. I will send.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. So tomorrow we are going to discuss initially how to know what are the different types of file systems, like disk-based file systems,
Okay,
network-based, memory-based file systems. What are their examples? What is the file system layout in Windows? Also, what is the file system layout in Linux? Structure of Windows file system, structure of Linux file system. Then we can discuss about the installation parts. Okay.
sure, sir. Sure.
Okay. Thank you all. Tomorrow we will meet.
Okay.
Same
Thank
link.
you, sir. Thank you, sir.